Hey besties, welcome back to the Cozy Corner. It's your girl Jen, and if you're new here, welcome. Just a regular old college student at Cal State Dominguez, but if you're not new here, welcome back to the chaos. Now, I figured since we're at the end of the year, I thought it would be kind of really fun to just go over all of the books that I didn't necessarily like each month of the year of 2025. So in January, not gonna lie, guys, like most of these books are typically rated between like a 3.75 or higher, but a couple of them they're rated like below a 2 point. So sorry, below like a 3.5, and that's actually really crazy because I've only ever DNF'd a couple of books, but for them to be that low is like actually kind of crazy. But let's just get into it, right? So in January, kind of going back a little bit because I want to give you guys some context before I go into it. In December of last year, a year ago, oh my gosh, December of last year, I delved into the what was it called? It was like the oh my gosh, let me like look at it. It was Jude's story. Jude, if you don't know, is like an elf or something. I'm so sorry. This was like a long time ago, right? The Cruel Prince trilogy. There we go. So we have the Cruel Prince, the Wicked King, and the Queen of Nothing. So technically it's called the Folk of the Air trilogy, but those are just the books in order. I finished the Wicked King like literally December 31st of last year, and then I started the Queen of Nothing on the first of this year. So all of these books I did rate like a 2.75 star to a 3 star, but the last one it was technically good. But again, compared to the rest of the books that I read in the month of January, like these are on the low end. So the Queen of Nothing I rated 3.75. If I remember correctly, we're following some situations that happened immediately after the Wicked King book, and I think it's like Carden, I think that's his name, right? Carden and Jude are trying to, Carden's trying to be a king, I think, and then Jude is trying to be his like ambassador, but then some other stuff are going on. I remember not really liking the Folk of the Air trilogy. It just wasn't really for me. I love the idea of like like not like high fae type of situation, but like the fairies and the wicked pixies and like the tricksters and things like that. I love the idea because like I read Cassandra Clare's, like I was super big into her Shadowhunter universe back in the day, like when I was 12. And I loved when Alec essentially it's called something different. He goes into fairyland, but I guess you could call it like under the mountain. He ended up going, well, I don't think it was Alec, it was somebody else. But he ended up getting stuck under there for a while, and like that's exactly what happened. There was like a bunch of like fae and like pixies and like trickster stuff, trickster fae, and it was like a fun time. This book I just remember not liking because it's a bully romance, and it was my first bully romance, and I don't think it was like handled very well. I don't know what that says about me. I just remember not really liking it. The next one though, guys, don't come for me. Children of Blood and Bone by I forget her last name. I forget her first name, but her last name is Adeyemi. I just remember not really loving this series. This is like a long time ago, and if you ever asked me when I had for breakfast yesterday, I'm not gonna be able to tell you what it was. So to remember what the plots were for these books, that's crazy. I do distinctly remember something about hmm, I think in this world, people that have powers and a specific group of ethnicity of people are essentially like not slaves, but like lower class citizens and like treated like garbage. And the people that it's interesting because these same people that are like treated like garbage, their ancestors have these powers, I think, but they were overthrown by the people that don't have power. So it was like kind of like a reverse powerless series, like magic system, if that makes sense. And this one girl, while she's like being oppressed, she accidentally ends up like exposing her magic, and she didn't know that she had magic, and so it's like it goes on from there. They talk about a lot of like representation of like mistreated groups of people and minority groups, and how they're despaired throughout their life, and so they're trying to fight for like justice and things. I do remember though not liking the third book just because of the twists that happened, and I just personally feel like it didn't really take the plot anywhere. It was kind of just like, oh, these new groups of bad guys came, and then like we dealt with them, and then like yay, that's it, right? Like I don't know. It just kind of like went left from the actual story. But the Children of Blood and Bone trilogy, it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't my favorite series ever, but like it was fine. In February, I read the second book, which was The Children of Anguish and Anarchy. This is I actually ended up rating both of these books 3.75 stars. It was like just shy of a 4 star. I didn't hate it at that point. I didn't like not like it. It was just like it was like a fine book. It was like nothing like super crazy. I was just like, "Oh, that's like really interesting. Let me read the third book." And then third book I was like, "Oh. Yeah. I don't think this is for me. And I was like, okay, like all of these books that I'm about to say, like if these are like your favorite books, I love that for you. And if these aren't your favorite books, that's fine as well because reading is subjective and everybody's gonna have their own thoughts and opinions on like, you know, what they like and what they don't like, and that's totally fine. As long as your opinions like aren't directly affecting anybody else and like, you know, you're good, right? So that was in February. In March, I only read 3 books, and that was because like I think it was like my first midterm. So usually February is like midterm season for like the first midterms of the classes. But I only ended up reading 3 books. 2 of them were like chonkers. Like if you remember, like way back in the freaking day, in March. No, I'm so sorry. I meant March. It wasn't February. It was March that I only read 3 books. But way back then, I just remember reading the Priory of the Orange Tree duology. And you guys, those books are long as fuck for no reason. And it's like the world building, the plot development, the character development, like all these different characters that you're following and you're still trying to keep up with the story. I was like having a hard time because I'm like, this is so crazy. And I was trying to like put it all within a 31-day period and I was like having a slow time reading it anyway. And I think I picked up audiobooks for the first time at that point because of how slow I was reading. But the I kind of liked the Priory, excuse me, I liked the Priory of the Orange Tree. I gave that one 4.75 stars. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. But A Day of Fallen Night, I remember not really liking that as much. I preferred the first one, which is funny because The Day of Fallen Night is actually a prequel to the Priory of the Orange Tree. We're essentially following like I think it's 100 years ago, something like that, and we're following the ancestors of the Priory of the Orange Tree in like this other uh group of people like to the east. Essentially it'd be like usually, if I remember correctly, like the Priory of the Orange Tree is kind of set in Europe. Like it gave very like German-esque as far as like their architecture and things. And then the east, if I remember, is like very like East Asian cultured. Like I was thinking like it was the island of Japan with how like all of the architectures were being described. But that one I don't remember why I didn't like it as much, but I did mark it down an entire star and I gave it 3.75 stars. Again, like it wasn't a horrible book, wasn't the most horrible book that I ever read, but I just didn't like it. And I think like now I'm like rating my books like a little bit more strictly, whereas before I was just like, oh, you get a 5 stars, and you get a 5 stars, and I love this, so it was a 4 stars, and it was like a whole thing, right? But now I'm just like, if I didn't love it, 4 stars. If I didn't hate it, 3 stars. Like, does that make sense? So in April, I delved into the Powerless trilogy, and Fearless had come out. And I was actually kind of sad, guys, because I was really looking forward to it. Like, I got on the hype train and I pre-ordered. It wasn't a special edition, but like I pre-ordered the deluxe edition at Barnes and Nobles, and was kind of sad with how like the story came out. Like, don't get me wrong, don't come for me. It wasn't a horrible book. Again, it was rated like just shy of a 4 star, but like it wasn't. It's not my favorite series in the world, and that's okay. Again, rating is subjective. But Fearless, essentially, how do I say this without spoiling anything? We're basically following the trials and Powerless, but making it solely about the FMC so that she can become like accepted by the kingdom, if that makes sense. And we're following an extra point of view, which is interesting considering he's kind of like thonked already, but we're following like his point of view and we learn some stuff. And then there's like a possible sibling trope and you're just like, oh, I feel so icky, and then it wasn't that, and then it was, and then it was a whole thing. It was like, honestly, it brought me back to like when I was reading Cassandra Clare for the first time, the World Instruments series, and I was reading that one trope at the beginning of the book and I didn't get fixed until book 3, so like it was fine at that point, but like in the first like 2 or 3 books I was like cringed out because I'm like, I don't think that's more than taboo, like I just feel like it's weird, right? But that was April. In May, I only read 4 books, but the worst 2 books. Okay, I read the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology, right? Technically, this is 3 because both books I considered a 3.75 stars. If you don't know what it is, Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan is essentially like following ancient Chinese mythology, kind of like way back in the day, and you're following a moon goddess whose daughter was not supposed to have been born. Like nobody knows that she was born, and then people end up finding out about her, and then she ends up having to like go into hiding. She ends up becoming a like a maid kind of in the imperial palace, and then like the prince ends up following for her. There's a love triangle that didn't really need to happen, and then it doesn't get fixed at the end, like nothing really happens at all. But I remember not minding the first book, but the second book was like, I don't know, right? So I definitely remember not liking the second book as much. So both books combined, 3.75 stars. The second least rated book on my TBR for May was The Love on the Brain. This was my one of my first, like, I think it was like my second Ali Hazelwood book. My first one was like the Love Theoretically book, and guys, I loved that one. I was not a love hypothesis girly. I actually haven't read that one yet, funnily enough. So going from like a high, like my first Ali Hazelwood book, I loved it, blah blah blah, and then reading Love on the Brain, I was like, this wasn't as good, right? Again, like, I'm not bashing the book like in any means. Like, it wasn't necessarily anything like super wrong with the book. It just didn't vibe with me personally. If I remember correctly, we are following. I want to say it's the. That's a hard question because I want to say it's the theoretical physicist versus the physical physicist. Let me just like look at the plot synopsis real quick. Love Theoretically by Love the Coopers. um, Enemies to Lovers. No, I'm stupid. Sorry. Love on the Brain. Exactly. Love on the Spectrum. I still haven't watched that show. I've been wanting to watch it forever, you guys. Okay, so a neuroscientist who has to co-lead a dream project with NASA with her academic nemesis Levi Ward, leading to an enemies to lovers romance filled with witty banter, scientific challenges, and a fake dating trope. Do they fake date? I don't remember that. Um, but I do remember the ending being kind of interesting. Like, I think what gave it a 3.75 star, not like that full 4 star, was because there was like all of a sudden there was like a very sudden antagonist, and he was just like bam, blah 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 blah, and then I'm just like, huh, where did you come from? Like, you were big chilling this entire book. Why are you acting like that? But that was that. So now we're diving into June. I read the Night and the Moth book, and I think this is where my not like love, but like not love, like, if that makes sense. Like, if I have mentioned before, which I have said something along the lines of like, if I listen to an audiobook, I may not rate it as high as if I read it personally, if I read it like physically, or like even on a e-reader. There we go. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Just because I tend to have things on 2 times speed and sometimes I'm not paying attention. And I think that's maybe why I did not love The Night and the Moth. Actually, there was 2 books that I didn't hate, that I didn't love this month, and one of them was way worse. So I could tell you what the Night and the Moth book and why that was so bad, but well, forget, why not? So with the Night and the Moth, I think my issues was like I was having a hard time following the story. I do think what saved it for me was the gargoyle and, like, finding more about him. Like, I think at the last chunk of the book, like, you got to hear more about Bartholomew and where he come from and like who he is, like, originally, and like how the I forget what they're called, but it's like the diviners, something like that, how they can become something else if they continue down the divining path, if that makes sense, because of some spell or whatever. That's what saved it for me. The rest of the book, it was just kind of slow, maybe just because I wasn't paying attention and not loving it, but that is what it is. 3.75 stars for the Night and Moth. Bold moves. It was a bold move for me to read it. Let me just tell you. I forget if this was like an audiobook original, or like, no, I forget if this was like a book that I had won or like what, but it was available on Kindle somehow, whether that was from winning a Goodreads giveaway or what, but like there was an audiobook version of it, so it's like I was reading and listening to it, like alternating kind of, and I swear I had to spend an entire afternoon listening to this shit on 2.75 speed just to get through it. And that may sound like a lot, but I typically have things on two times speed, just like in general. That's how my ADHD works. Like, it makes sense to me. But I could not follow the book. I was like literally sitting down, putting laundry away, like just doing menial, like, dorm, because I was in the dorms at that point, like little chores, like just trying to like focus on this specific book. But I just couldn't get into it. We're essentially following, I think, a crunchy singer, maybe possibly, and she's like doing. I want to say she's partaking in this film. I think maybe not, and she's. Oh, you know what? No. So her ex from, like, I think they were childhood sweethearts or something like that, comes back into her life with the opportunity to, like, he really wants her to help him direct this film, and I think it's following her and how she became like the star that she is. But the entire time there's no like, it's like a second chance romance. There's no like reason why they should be together, and then at some point it just becomes like a friends with benefits so that they can just get off. But there wasn't like any actual chemistry between them besides like the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And that's how I felt like the entire time. I'm like, you guys just fucking just kiss and make up already. I'm so over this. Please stop. Like I'm tired. That was like one of the worst books that I've read in 2025. I'm not gonna lie. Um, in July, I continued my Born of Blood and Ash and A Flesh in the Fire series, and this is where I DNF'd. And I'm not going to talk about the rest of the books that I read this month, except for the one that I DNF'd. So this was Born of Blood and Ash. I believe, possibly, maybe that this follows this falls in the Fire in the Flesh series, which is like the prequel, and I think this is after possibly I think this is after Serafina comes back from her like prisoner ship from like this time that she was spending within the last book. And I'm not gonna lie, there was too many fucking spicy scenes. And like literally on Goodreads, like most of the books that I had read up to that point, like there was a comment in the book saying, I didn't mind this book, it was rated this, but like I didn't love the spicy scenes. Like I could have done without that. I do understand that this is like an adult book. Like this is like full on spicy. We got powers, we got Shadow Daddy, like you know, all of this stuff that would go within that realm. But I feel like we couldn't get out of bed to see what the story was about. Like we could not move forward because we just could not get out of bed because the spicy scenes in the bed just kept going on. And at that point, it was like every single chapter was full of like an 80% chunk of just a sex scene. And I'm like, I don't mind a good spicy time every once in a while. I myself have a good spicy time every once in a while, but like I still have a life. And like y'all are acting like I don't have a life, considering y'all have this like this big bag that y'all are trying to defeat. But I get it, you know, sometimes you just gotta rub one out so that you can deal with the stress. Like it just wasn't for me. And I do think that I only had a few more books to read at that point, but I was just kind of done. I kind of already knew how the story was gonna end essentially. Like there was probably gonna be a couple of characters that died at that point. But I just could not give myself to care less. I could not find any fuck on the floor to read it. The fuck's in my room non-existent because I could not find the will to just read that book. And I was actually really sad because like I had essentially like spent a significant amount of time at Book Off like collecting the entire series at some point. Like I was paying for these books for like $5, $10 here and there. And so for me to have collected all of those and plan to read it and then be like, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it, but like let's see. That was like my moment of like, you know what, maybe you should buy the first book. Maybe you should buy the second and third book later after you read the first book. But that was just like a lesson learned for myself. In August, let's see what was my least rated book this month. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So this typically happens within the first book of a series. I tend to rate it a little bit lower than the rest of the series, especially if it's like a duology or a trilogy, because there's it's the first book. Like you still need to like get the lore, get like a bunch of other stuff like learned about the series before you move on. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart. This was after the Caraval trilogy that I had read, and I'm so dumb. Literally, I forget what video it was, but like a few videos ago, I think I was going over like all the books that I read between like July and September or something like that, and I kept saying that like I was getting things mixed up is what it was, because Stephanie Garber has two series that essentially has like they follow the same characters kind of. Like some characters will like make an appearance in this trilogy and then you'll be like, hey Bessie, what's up? But it's like they have their own world and story that they already went through. But Caraval follows two sisters and they end up doing their own thing. I didn't mind it. But Once Upon a Broken Heart follows like an entirely different set of characters. It does follow the Prince of Hearts, which is why it's called Once Upon a Broken Heart. But we're following a new FMC, right? So we're following Evangeline. I rated this 4 stars, so it was like it was not under a 4 star. Like it was fine. It was just like I wanted to learn more about the story before I could like fully love it, right? In the next two books in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, I rated 4.5 stars. So it's like it was a fine book. There was nothing like significantly wrong about it. It was one of my favorite book of the year, and that was totally fine. I do recommend going to read it. None of these books are like I hated this book except for the one that I DNF'd because again, we're not going to talk about it, right? That's a whole different story. And I feel like you should like read these books yourself and make your own opinions about them yourself. So I'm just giving them my opinion and my experience, my truth. You know what I'm saying? But Once Upon a Broken Heart essentially follows Evangeline Fox and the Prince of Hearts, Jax, yeah. And so Evangeline, way back in the day, like at the beginning of this, in the beginnings of this book, she is supposed to get married to this guy. The guy ends up fucking her over and marries her sister instead, which is absolutely crazy if you ask me. So she goes to the Prince of Hearts, Jax, and she makes a deal with him to essentially like stop the marriage from happening. and it ends up like something happens and it turns everybody to stone. Like everybody at the wedding and attending was like turned to stone. I forget what specifically happens from there, but I do remember Evangeline getting turned to stone as well, and then her waking up like months later by this other character that you meet in the Caravel trilogy, but you like learn more about in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. And he essentially like brings her back from the Stone Age essentially, and is like, don't trust Jax, blah 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 blah. And then Jax ends up playing not like it's not a fake dating trope. It is, but it's not. So Jax ends up helping her, Evangeline, get with the prince of this kingdom. And so they're fake dating, but the prince ends up like actually falling in love with her, and then it's a whole thing, and like the story goes on from there. August wasn't like the most horrible reading month, considering like I had a couple of 5 stars in this month. Like it was good. It was a pretty good reading month. I'm not gonna lie. September. September, I only read 5 books. And we already know September was like a really hard month for me because of everything that happened within the month of September that I talked to you guys about a few videos ago. If you want to know what that was and like that whole situation, go check that out. There wasn't anything significant that happened in my life to impact my reading situations. It was like a bunch of like outworldy factors that like maybe not want to pick up a book to read. That being said, I love Leigh Bardugo. I love her books. However, I don't know what it was. September was kind of weird, but Ninth House, I could not get into for the life of me. I was literally trying to pick up this book every time that I had a minute to spare. Like I'm like walking to and from work, my car, to and from class. I just trying to get this book read, right? But I could not for the life of me get into it. We're essentially following like secret societies, Harvard, Yale type of situation, and this one girl happens to be able to see ghosts, and so she kind of ends up becoming a ghostbuster. Not literally, but like she helps the secret societies who she's like the guard dog for them while they're conducting their rituals and shenanigans for like a bunch of different reasons, like who's gonna win the lottery, who's gonna become the next president, shit like that. And she's keeping the paranormal world from fucking around because they like specific things that happen within those like rituals. Somebody's gone missing. We're trying to find him. He's possibly dead. She comes back to life. Is he actually dead? Who done it? Like it was just a whole bunch of shenanigans. And typically, like on paper, it's something I would like, but I did not. The Dark Academia was not academia even for me that month. That brings us to October. Your girl read 16 books. 16 books in the month of October. That is insane. I don't know what crawled up my ass that month, but like it was a really good month considering a lot of stuff that happened that month. The least favorite book on that month was The Long Walk by Stephen King. Not to say it was the most horrible book that I've ever read because it did keep me entertained. What docked it for me, and I don't know what this says about myself, but while it was an interesting read, you could tell that while it was written in 1975, it was written in, if that makes sense. Like the premise of the book was written in like the 1930s. There was a lot of like literally the N word with the hard R was mentioned at the 25% mark and at the 75% mark. So it was like it was mentioned twice. There was a lot of misogynistic viewpoints and like outward boy shenanigans that just it was a whole bunch of stuff. I feel like you should go read it yourself to make your own opinion because it wasn't necessarily like the worst book that I've ever read, but I just couldn't agree with like what was being said. It was entertaining, but a whole bunch of shit I just couldn't get behind. Essentially, we're following 100 guys who every year a different group of 100 guys, well, kids mostly, they're like 14, 15, 12. They go on a long walk, right? And so the entire book is spanning a specific amount of time going on a long walk. You have this like wristwatch, essentially, not really, but that's like it's essentially what that is. That monitors how fast you're walking, and if you, in the book at least, if you've watched the movie, there's a lot of things that I actually pointed out when I had to read the book before I watched the movie. There's a lot of things that are different. You're not gonna see the N word mentioned anywhere in that book and that movie, which is fine. You're not gonna see a whole lot of misogynistic viewpoints in that movie, which is fine. We're keeping up with the times. But regardless, in the book, if you walk below 4 miles an hour, you get shot. If in the movie, if you walk, I think less than like 2.75 or 3 miles an hour, then you got shot. But essentially, the last man walking wins. So the ending was really interesting for me, and I think that's what saved the book from like being super low, but it was just like the rest of the stuff that I just could not get behind. November, last month. The worst book that I read that month, and again, it wasn't bad, none of these books, aside from like the couple that I've already mentioned, were the worst books that I've ever read. They also aren't to say that you should not go and read these books yourself because they're pretty decent reads. But Promise to the Pyre is also a debut novel and by a debut author. And like considering the rest of the books that I read that month, like I hit 3 5 stars. Like the rest of the books that I had read, minus possibly one, was a 4.75. So it's like for this to be considered like the lowest book rated on my TBR for November, like it's totally fine. Promise to the Pyre by Wendy Emberfield. I rated a 3.75 to a 4 star. I'm still deciding. I know it's November. Sorry, I know it's December 9th. I'm still deciding, okay? Like, I still think about it and I'm like, I don't know. But Promise the Pyre is essentially following a girl, very Selena Sardathian coded, very From Blood and Ash coded, very a couple of the characters, Alec from the Shadowhunter universe coded. If you know, you know. I could see that this author pulled from a couple of different pulled a couple of different ideas from a couple of different universes and made her own story. But I do think it wasn't that bad. I do also think that she could have gone a little bit more deeper into creating her own world and maybe like expanding upon her own ideas rather than maybe pulling a similar idea from like a different series. Kind of very similar to like Red Queen, Powerless, and like any other competition coded book. If that makes sense. Again, totally love the book. Didn't mind it. I do want to see like what Wendy Emberfield comes out with like in the future because again, for a first book for a debut author, not bad at all. I've like read worse books considering like this is like the worst books of my TBR for like the entirety of 25. Like it wasn't really bad. I do say that you should go read all of these books, and I do say that you should buy the Kindle version of Promise of the Pyre because it's only $5 in Kindle. So there's my little, plug for like the promotion for this book, because I've been literally hyping up this book all year, as in like it's been on my anticipated reads for the entire year of 2025, and I'm so glad that it's finally out. I'm so glad that I read it. But yeah. Considering December is full of books that I'm expecting myself to really love, knocking on wood, I don't see any of these books becoming less than a what do you call it? I don't know if you heard that. The cat outside is insane. She's like purring and meowing and walking around, so all you see is it's hilarious. That was dramatic as fuck too, so that was embarrassing for myself. Um, Most of these books are books that I have that are kind of considered in myself, in my opinion, to be like books that I should not rate too low. The books that I have read so far, nothing lower than a 4 star, I think. Let me double check with my Goodreads, but I'm pretty sure that I have not rated any of these books yet lower than a 4 star. Yeah, 4.5, 4.25, and the last three that I read already have been 5 stars. So it's like this month is looking to be a really good month for me. Next month, I will hit you guys with like the best books that I've read in the year of 2025, and like we'll get into that. I kind of just figured, on a random Tuesday that well, honestly, this will be published by Saturday, but I kind of thought it would be fun to talk about all the books that I didn't maybe love or like the least rated books on my TBR for month to month, and like give you guys my reasons why. But if you liked this video, go ahead and like the video, hit that notification bell so you never miss when I upload a brand new video, and comment down below if you have read any of these books and if these books were rated higher on your TBR or higher on the like when you read them. Socials are gonna be linked down below, and like the video if I haven't already mentioned that. But I will see you guys next week for a brand new video. So I will see you guys soon. Bye.